Deuteronomy chapter 28 and 29 is a section that we read through today, and we are closing what's called the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible that was really foundational and is foundational for Christianity today and any really Judeo-Christian tradition. And so we close this off, and in closing, my reaction is going to be on kind of around 2 things. One is the natural or practical, and the other is the divine. And that'll mean a little bit more as I talk, but there's this big understanding scripturally, the Old and New Testament, right? Jesus was asked in the New Testament, what's the most important commands of the law, the Old Testament? And it's recorded several times that it's to love God and to love your neighbor. So you love God with all your heart and soul and mind, and then you love your neighbor, and both of these are an unselfish reaction. And what was striking to me is in these last 2 chapters, pretty long, in Moses' speeches about blessings and curses, and then all of the teachings we've gotten before in Deuteronomy and Leviticus and Numbers, is about how we effectively love God and love our neighbor, right? And in the time, the way that the people, God's people here, the covenant people, are being taught to love their neighbor is revolutionary. In kindness, in care, in justice, in fairness, in love, in blessing to the neighbor, right? It's like, don't charge interest, be kind to servants and slaves. There's justice among the sexes, men and women, that was revolutionary for the time. And the divine and the practical comes in this way. As I think there's a very practical nature to the blessings. God says, listen, if you follow these instructions, you're going to be blessed, right? And it's kind of the kindness begats kindness idea. You're going to be blessed because when you are kind and when you start when you have a group of people in a society that is structured around justice and fairness, you're going to experience justice and fairness, right? And we would say, yeah, that makes sense. If you're kind, people are kind to you. If you are fair in business, you would tend to have people be fair in business with you. It's this back and forth. But there's also then the divine piece, right? And it's the loving God. Because the reality is that just because you are kind and just towards other people does not always mean that people will be kind and just towards you. And so the divine piece is God says, I'm going to step in and work in those situations, right? But even beyond that, right? So God's going to step in, right? And he's going to bring kindness and justice when somebody else is trying to be evil. But then I think the beauty of this message is even when, and we read this in the Psalms that David's talking about, even when, right, I'm kind, I'm just, I'm living in a fair way towards other people, and somebody is not acting that way towards me and causing me difficulty, or when tragedy happens, God says, I'm divine and I'm there, and you are able to get through and sustain and still bless others in spite of the tragedy in your life. And so there's the practical of like living right? Living a kind, generous, righteous, fair, loving life towards the world and humanity and everything in it. And then there's trusting God that he works in all the gaps that come in there. And the divine covenant is that I'm with you always, even to the end. And so it's just a really cool thing is that God is there and he steps in, but ultimately the way is he's there with us through the difficult times that will come because someone else isn't living according to the covenant of kindness and generosity. Hope you are blessed.